Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to go over how you can use Excel to analyze an income statement as part of a series of videos that I'll do to cover this. So in today's example I'm going to go over FedEx. So FedEx released their latest earnings report on December 20th, and so what I've done is I've basically gone through some of their previous quarterly reports and pulled in information about their salaries and benefits, purchase and transportation costs, rentals, depreciation, all that stuff, and their operating income as well. And I like to focus on operating income just because that comes before any weird gains or losses, any other non-operating items that can impact net income. So operating income I always like to look at, and the goal here is to see, okay, of this $22.8 billion that FedEx generated, where did that money go? If I sum up this total here, I can see that adds up to $22.8 billion. So they had just under 1.2 billion in operating profit left over. So what I always like doing in these cases when I'm looking at earnings reports is to show this as a percentage of revenue, because right now you see, okay, you can ballpark how much these were, but in terms of how much they took away from revenue, we can put that as a percentage of revenue. So down here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy these line items as well, and I'll copy the headers as well just to make this simple. And what I'm going to do is, you could do a lookup here, but because everything's basically in the same location, I can just take this value for sales and employee benefits, divide it by the revenue figure here, and then what I can do is convert this into a percentage and say, okay, sales and employee benefits of 7.8 billion, we're about 34% of revenue. So that tells you that 34 cents of every dollar that FedEx generated went to cover sales and employee benefits. Now, if I want to copy this over to all these other cells and apply the same sort of rules, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to freeze the revenue line C7. So I'm interested in freezing the row only, not the column. And then for C8, this I can leave intact because this is going to move as I copy this formula across. So now I'm going to drag this down, and then I can also drag it across. And because of the way I've frozen it, you can see that this is still taken as a percentage of this. So I can see the operating income. We can see their operating profit. This past quarter was 5%. Roughly 2 years ago it was about 4%. So there's been some variation, but you quickly start to see the trending on here. Sales and employee benefits were 34%, whereas back here in the third quarter of fiscal 2021 they were 40%. So they actually come down in terms of revenue. But purchase transportation, which is one of their main expenses, has jumped up from 14% to 25%. So you start to see a little bit more of the movement. It's a bit harder to see if you're just looking at all these numbers as one large image. And so by doing this, you can do a bit of margin analysis if you were looking at how much of their expenses are going to these different buckets. Now, what's really helpful with Excel is it makes it easy to convert this data into a chart and to visualize this as well. So because I've already got this set up as a table, what I can do is just select this and go to Insert, select Chart, and go to All Charts. And so I'm going to pick the stacked 100% column, so they add up to 100%. And so it's easy to visualize this. So now I'm starting to see all these different bars, and it's easy to see what makes up what. Now, one of the things I like to do, especially when you're comparing these in close quarters, what I suggest doing it is to format the data series and shrink the gap width, maybe down to like 10%, just so so the blocks are really wide, and it's easy to see the progression from one period to the next. Another thing you may want to consider doing is adjusting the order of these items, right? Because right now I've just copied this exactly as how they've come through from the company's financials. But what you may want to do is put maybe the more important expense items here at the bottom, and these smaller ones, or the the less controllable items, like depreciation is a good example. I mean, there's not a whole lot FedEx is going to be able to do to affect this depreciation cost. So it's not something that you may necessarily want to focus on. And so if you right click and select data, you can move these items up and down in terms of level of importance. Like right now we've got sales and employee benefits. That's obviously an important one. But something like depreciation, we can put it all the way down to the bottom, right? So it starts to move up here. Fuels maybe another one that's not really going to be very controllable for the company. Maybe put maintenance above rentals, whatever the case may be. But just the idea being that the more crucial expenses, or the ones that you want to focus on the most, are right at the bottom here, because then it's a whole lot easier to say, okay, sales plus purchase transportation, which are the two big costs for FedEx, add up to about, let's say just under 60% here. And then you can go across and you can see that trend, what it's looked like in previous periods. And another thing you may want to consider is maybe just changing the colors and the look of this as well, just to make it a bit easier to see the transition. Because one thing that Excel could do a bit better is if you go to the chart design and change the colors. I mean, it's either really subtle, these changes, you've got shades of blue, or they're really extreme, jumping from green to blue to yellow. So it's not really what I consider ideal. So you could always select any one of these items. Like, let's say I've got the blue one selected right now, and I can change this to a dark red. And then for, let's say, purchase transportation, make a more gradual shift to, let's say, orange. The next item down could be, let's say, yellow or something to that effect. And then this one could be a lighter shade, and then so on and so forth. Just so you've got a bit more of a transition there, one that maybe makes a bit more sense, and it isn't an eyesore, or isn't horrible to have to look at. So for operating income, I'd probably set that one to black, and maybe even add a data label, and if I click on these individual labels, I can also make them white. So now we can see the margins in there. So it's a lot more easier to see, and at the same time look at what the operating margins were. So these are just a few of the ways how you can analyze a company's earnings report when they come out, to see how their margins are doing and how the company's controlling its costs, and rather than just looking at their revenue or their income, because that way you get a better understanding of how the business is performing and where it's doing well and where it may be struggling. And obviously, by putting in more data, you've got more trending, you've got more of a pattern that you can follow. Because if you just looked at fiscal 2023 Q2 versus Q2 the previous year, you're not gonna get that sense, right? You're going to see a drop in margin from 7% to 5%, but it's not going to be indicative of a longer trend, which is always helpful when you're looking at stocks and deciding which investments to pursue. So hope you found this video useful. I have other ones relating to analyzing income statements in the future. I just wanted to start with this one and showing you how to analyze in terms of percentage of revenue and charting that out as well. So hope you found this useful, and thank you for watching.